Hello and welcome back to the Floorplan. Matt Webber with you opposite me.
Hello, Matt.
Dr. Libby Sander.
How are you?
I'm okay. I got a sore toe though.
Is this a cricket injury?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What's happened?
Well, apart from the fact that I've signed up for Winter League cricket because Summer League cricket was so fun, I've learned that as a result of having very stiff ankles and a very stiff big toe joint, that I'm putting undue stress on my big toenail, and I've had to have a significant chunk of it removed.
What?
Do you want to see?
What?
Do you
No,
want to see?
no.
There it is.
Oh, okay.
I have to.
It's
I
covered
have,
up, thank
I've come
goodness.
to work in Birkenstocks today.
Oh, how good are Birkenstocks?
They're
though?
so good.
I love Birkenstocks, but that's a separate conversation.
Perfect for
Hey,
this kind of injury, though.
I didn't know stiff ankles was a thing.
Turns out I'm old, Libby.
No, is this because of being old, or you've always had stiff ankles?
Turns out I'm old.
Well,
and
do you know what you
inflexible.
should take up, aside from yoga, which we've discussed, and you've talked about stretching? Ballet.
Bit of ballet.
Wouldn't suggest point shoes at this point,
No.
but ballet is very good for, because you're always articulating through your feet and your toes and your ankles,
Yes.
building up the strength. Very, very good for ankle strength. So I think the listeners would enjoy this, and we've been talking about video
Yeah.
since we did the video with Charles, and so I feel like this could add a whole new dimension to our chit-chat banter, Matt, if we had some experimentation.
Your
Matt-
next episode.
Matt doing ballet.
I'll be in a tutu. You mentioned Charles last episode, very well received. Unsurprisingly, he's a significant leader in his space with a significant profile, but pretty exciting.
It was fantastic,
Yeah.
and lots of commentary about his opinions and thoughts and ideas about where things are heading, which we're kind of seeing playing out at the moment. So very, very good.
To this week, though, we have much to talk about and another really, really cool guest too. I'll get you to introduce he a little bit later on, but we are in the throes of an election campaign at the moment. Yes.
So annoying.
But it's interesting from an organisational behaviour perspective because one of the first items on the policy agenda, and this was before an election was formally announced, but the opposition, led by Peter Dutton, announced that one of the things that they would like to do if they win power is make changes to the public service, including forcing some public servants back to work where they've been previously working at home, probably since the COVID times, but there's been
Everyone was going to be back 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
And Chainsaw, following in the slipstream of Elon and announcing he was going to sack 41,000 public service workers and also make everyone come back to the office 5 days a week. But that didn't age well, did it?
Didn't last long, did it? And the backlash was immediate and, well, really led by the female voice on this particular issue saying, well, no, that's not fair. That's not right. My life won't work unless the flexibility remains in place. I'll have to look for a new job. This is wrong. It works for me, which aligns with all the evidence that we've been speaking about. So surprise, surprise, evidence usurps political
Evidence
policy
does.
making.
Exactly.
Fascinating though. I was really, well, in a way, energised by the rapid response to what was a bit of a stinker of an idea, ill thought, perhaps, populist, perhaps, but yeah, it's been turned on its head, and that's been wound right back. That's not on the agenda anymore. All of a sudden,
Yeah, it's fascinating because if we want greater participation in the workforce, as we've talked about, then you can't have a policy that says everyone must come to the office 5 days a week, as we've said ad nauseum, Matt, and the evidence doesn't support you'll be more productive in the office than at home. We sound like a broken record, don't we?
we do, but
It's shown.
it's
played out.
shown. It's the proof is in the pud, as they say. One other theme across this series of the floor plan, Libby, has been, well, we've had a run of what I think are new words, and we've got another one now. Polyworking is apparently on the rise among millennials. I'm almost a little bit scared to ask what polyworking is. Does that mean turning up to work with multiple partners or something? I don't know.
Well, we've had another trend across this season, haven't we, of the floor plan as well, about interesting exploits in the office. So
Yes, true,
let's leave
true.
it at that
Yes.
for this week.
Mm.
You can go back earlier in the season, listeners, if you don't know what we're talking about. But how many of your colleagues have had sex with another one of your colleagues, if you're interested?
Indeed.
A lot of stats about that.
Yeah.
But no, Matt, you'll be happy to know that polyworking is where individuals are holding multiple jobs to cope with stagnant wages and persistent inflation. So not having multiple co-workers as their partners. So over half of millennials now maintain more than one income stream. Nearly a quarter are juggling 3 jobs, and a third are taking on 4 or more income earning activities beyond their main employment. That's pretty staggering.
That's a lot. Have you ever been a poly worker in your time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we also call it like a portfolio career or having multiple job holding, various names, but TikTok seems to be good at coming up with the trendy ones. And it's not always, yes, of course, it's because you need to earn more income from many people, but it's also because a lot of the time you want more interest and variety in your jobs, and your main job is just a little bit too boring.
The rise of the poly worker. Is it any surprise then that recharge days are also a thing?
Yes, we had the please, if you come back to the office, we'll give you pizza. We'll put on a movie night for you to watch with your friends at work. If you have any friends at work, they're not
just what you want on a Tuesday night, just to stay back late and watch a movie.
Friday. You'd have to do it on a Friday. However, so now what we're seeing, despite the evidence and despite the fact that a lot of this is just headline, is that to encourage employees to come back to the office, some companies are offering additional recharge days, so giving extra paid time off as a compromise. It's ridiculous.
A little recharge day carrot.
What would you do if you had a recharge day, Matt?
Pay a few bills. I'd be doing stuff anyway. I'd be doing life stuff. That's the stuff where I fall behind.
What about the self-care? This is supposed to be for well-being and supporting,
No, I find it hard enough just to keep up with life generally. So
maybe you need the self-care day, Matt.
Well, the self-care day, that'd have to be in addition to the recharge day.
Okay, so recharge day, Matt needs one to pay his bills, but then you get another one
Yes.
for self-care.
Yes.
What are you going to do for that one?
Work on my ankle flexibility.
Go to a ballet class?
The array of exercises I've been given by my podiatrist.
But
I have a podiatrist these days. I think that's another indicator that I'm getting on a bit.
Is it a measure of how old you are by how many specialists you have?
Yes, rack up.
I think take up ballet, but I think this is a problem where people just don't do anything other, which is the point, right, of a lot of this conversation. Don't do anything other than work and then bills and life admin stuff.
We just need to extend the year a little bit. Just add a couple of weeks to it.
But even if we just
instead of 52.
gave you an extra day off, you're just going to pay the bills, which you could probably do on another day. So I think this is the shift we need, is how do we think differently about compartmentalizing our life and work? Because this is more common for men. You can't even think about what you would do on a well-being day.
No.
It's a foreign concept, but that's not good. Yeah.
No, it's not healthy.
No,
not at all.
So instead of having a life goal, why don't we have Matt come back, listeners, in the next episode with his plan for a self-care day?
In a tutu.
Well,
because
I don't know about the tutu.
Because I will have been to my bar class in the morning.
If you want to, but I think no bill paying is allowed, all right?
Okay. We'll just figure something out. Yeah, okay. I've got homework then, Libby. I've got homework. To this week's special guest, tell us about him.
Yeah, it was a huge pleasure to have Raj Choudhury, who is an associate professor from the Harvard Business School, on the podcast. Raj has got a new book coming out very shortly, and his research area is on location flexibility, so geographic flexibility, and researching, well, if you don't go to the office at all, or if you don't go very much, what difference does that make? And then instead of this idea of weekly hybrid, he's also looked at monthly hybrid, quarterly hybrid, which is similar to companies like Atlassian, where you only have to go 4 days of the year, and lots of research in the public sector and the private sector showing this does work. This is the way of the future. So Raj's book is called The World is Your Office, which sounds amazing. and how working from anywhere can boost talent, productivity, and innovation. And it's released on April 22nd. So I had the enormous privilege through Harvard Business Press to read the book before I interviewed Raj, which it's fantastic. So everyone, this should be your answer to your boss saying, come back to the office 5 days a week. Tons of research, very readable, just a fantastic book.
Out of the Harvard Business School, Raj Choudhury.
Raj, welcome to the Floorplan, all the way from Boston.
Hi, Libby. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I have followed your research for a while as a fellow academic in very closely related field to my own research, looking at the effects of the physical work environment on a range of individual and organizational outcomes. So I was delighted to have the opportunity to read your shortly released new book, The World is Your Office, and how work from anywhere boosts talent, productivity, and innovation. So very excited to dive into that today. But where I'd love to start, Raj, is sometimes, and I'm sure you get equally frustrated as I do, we see all of these media headlines and particular narratives and one person's view about the best way to work or the best location to work. And then all of a sudden, people think that is gospel and everyone else should do it. And what I love about your research is that before you became an academic, you had a long and very, accredited, highly acclaimed history in, consulting and really applying this on the ground. So tell us a little bit about your background and then how you did get interested in turning this into a research career.
Sure. Thanks for having me again. I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School. I've been here for 12 years on the faculty. And prior to that, I was on the faculty at Wharton. But as you said, Libby, prior to academia, prior to doing my PhD, I was in the quote-unquote real world for many years. So I was with McKinsey, doing consulting for 5 years, and then I ran a business with Microsoft out of Southeast Asia. So I've lived across multiple continents. And what I've been studying for more than a decade now is what I call the geography of work. And that was partly motivated based on my own experiences as a migrant, just moving again and again and again, which I'm sure many of your viewers or listeners have experienced. And then questioning whether there is only one way to match companies to workers, which is to force workers to move. And then around 2018, so this is way before the pandemic, I stumbled upon the idea of work from anywhere in studying the US Patent Office. And that presented an alternative model where instead of forcing workers to move where the company is, this is moving the work to where the worker wants to live. And I found that model really intriguing. And of course, that's become my life now.
And let's just pick up on that paper in particular, because I think it's obviously very timely and I'm sure you get asked about this quite a lot. Tell us a little bit about the findings of that paper first, in terms of what was the outcome that you saw?
Yeah, so this was I said before the pandemic, and the patent office, the U.S. Patent Office, which had an office in Alexandria, Virginia, close to the capital, was struggling to hire patent examiners in many of their emerging technological fields. So, for instance, they were struggling to find software patent examiners because most of the qualified people live in California and they don't want to move to DC
No.
and work as a patent examiner. So they started this program back in 2012, where they allowed patent examiners the freedom to choose where to live. And you only had to come physically together a few times a year. And Congress, the US Congress, allowed them to do this for a period of 5 years. So when I was in the patent office, they had to go back to Congress and report whether this program had worked, whether this was good or harmful for productivity. So we did a very careful study, which I can get into if there's interest, where we are able to separate causality and correlation. And we found that the transition to work from anywhere led to a 4.4% increase in productivity, which was great news for the patent office. But I actually see the other finding in this paper as more important, which is they were now able to successfully hire from colleges down south
Mm.
and in the western parts of the country. So what Work from Anywhere did was expand the access to talent. And I've been since very convinced that productivity is a great gain, but the main reason to consider work from anywhere is that it expands the labor market from where firms can hire.
Mm. I want to come back to that in a minute. But for some of our listeners who might be a little bit overwhelmed by the different terms in this field, because we hear digital nomad and remote work and work from home and hybrid, can you just walk us through a little bit what these different terms mean and why? And I 100% agree with you, work from anywhere is the term we should be thinking about rather than some of these other things that have become very topical since the pandemic.
Yeah, so I actually, thanks for asking the question. I think that, it's very important to understand that work from anywhere is not the same as work from home. So work from anywhere is a work arrangement. It's distributed work where the worker is now able to choose the city, the state, and sometimes even the country they want to live in. And they don't have to keep moving like digital nomads do. They could just say, I want to live in Melbourne because that's where my family is,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to move to Adelaide, which I'm guessing has a lower cost of living than
Yes.
maybe Melbourne or Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on where your family is, your life, your circumstances, uh, what is important for you from geography, you get to choose where to live. That's work from anywhere.
Mm.
And the way I've thought about the world is that in a work from anywhere world, you get to live where you choose, but occasionally you have to meet colleagues in person. And from that perspective, this is also hybrid work. And in the book, just to preview, Libby, I talk about hybrid being much more than going to an office once a week or twice a week. That is something I called weekly hybrid. There is also a model which I call the monthly hybrid model, where you get to live in Adelaide, but you fly down to Perth or you fly down to, I don't know, Melbourne once a month to spend time with colleagues, maybe 3 days. There's also a version which I call quarterly hybrid, where now you can live in Wellington
Mm-hmm.
because your team is meeting once a quarter on a retreat every quarter, but you guys only come together once a quarter and spend the whole week together. So I see work from anywhere entirely possible in a hybrid format. And actually, the monthly and the quarterly hybrid makes it easier for people to work from anywhere compared to the weekly hybrid model.
Mm. And actually, I'd love to chat about a few examples of that because I completely agree. And I know it's the Australian big tech unicorn Atlassian have that kind of a model where and it's a competitive advantage, isn't it, for these companies? So, you can work from anywhere in the world you like and just come to one of our offices once a quarter. I think Canva, the other Australian unicorn, has, I can't remember now if it's 8 days a year. And when early on in the pandemic or after it had sort of settled down, Apple came out and said everyone must come back to the office. And one of the Atlassian founders came out and said, "Hey, anyone at Apple want to come and work at Atlassian?" So it does become a competitive advantage for companies, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think the reason, again, I think I can't say this enough, that work from anywhere has to be the work arrangement of choice, is it gives access to talent. And so, if a company allows for work from anywhere, it's not only the city that's your labor market, the whole country can become your labor market. In fact, the whole world can become your labor market. So, I'll give you one quick example. And by the way, Atlassian is hosting me in April to do a book launch. So, uh,
Fantastic.
anyone
Amazing.
anyone who's listening in from Atlassian, I'll probably see you guys there. So let me give you the example of another company that I worked very closely with, and they are Zapier. So Zapier is also all remote. They have about 800 employees. And if you think about a startup of Zapier's size 10 years back, you would imagine that company to be based in Silicon Valley or one of those places. And they would be competing for talent against Facebook and Google. Now, Zapier, because it's all remote, they don't have offices, they only do offsites. They are able to hire globally. And in fact, those 800 employees come from 21 countries. Now, I think that's just remarkable
Fantastic.
because the whole world opens up for startups and mid-sized companies that allow people to work from anywhere. And like you said, Libby, that also means that this talent is more diverse. It's more balanced on gender. You get more nationalities, you get more ethnicities. And there's, in fact, a new paper by a couple of colleagues at Wharton which show this with startup data that remote and distributed job postings attract more diverse job applicants. And the final thing I'll say here is work from anywhere solves a huge problem that's been around for decades, which is the dual career problem. For couples, even if one of them can work from anywhere, it becomes much easier for the couple. And the research, as you know, Libby, has shown that women have borne the brunt of dual career situations. Women have given up on job opportunities and even promotion opportunities because of dual career situation. But if the organization allows the man or woman or anyone to work from anywhere, then you're not constrained for job opportunities or promotions. You can advance in your career without changing places.
Yeah, the participation in the workforce is just an absolutely, it can't be understated how enormous this is in terms of benefits for organizations, for the individuals, but for society as well. And if we look at the modeling by economists around the labor supply in the future, this is going to be a critical thing. We're getting declining rates of labor force participation. And so we really need to think about how can we change that. And there are benefits for so many groups in terms of now being able to participate where they couldn't. I want to ask you, though, one of the media headline questions that certainly annoys me in this space, and I'm sure you as well, is that, oh, well, talented American employee, now that we can hire from anywhere in the world, companies are not going to bother with you. They're just going to outsource to somewhere where they can hire someone like you at a third of the cost. What's your response to those types of headlines?
So my response is that, I think for supply constrained jobs, jobs where there are not enough applicants, it doesn't matter where the job is performed. My belief is that kind of a job will be, the salary will be location independent. So let me give an examples. In today's world, if you're looking for an AI engineer, good luck if you can find such a
Right.
person and offer like a 20% discount
Yeah.
on salary because of where the person is living.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for tasks which are supply constrained, I completely feel that the wage will be location independent. Now, if there's a task which is not supply constrained, companies will try to arbitrage, and I feel that's something that is the labor market dynamics which will play out. But whether the employee will save in real income, which is the wage minus the cost of living, depends on where the employee lives.
That's right.
I think while the employer has a choice on wages, the employee now has a choice on cost of living. So there's also a potential in that case for the company to save a little and the employee to also be better off.
Absolutely. And then if we talk about this remote, the retreat kind of offsite model with these largely remote companies or work from home work from anywhere monthly, or tell us about that, because I think certainly those companies we've mentioned have that model, and we hear frequently that we can't maintain culture, that we can't maintain team cohesion and knowledge transfer in companies that are doing this. However, your research and others have of course shown that to be different. So firstly, tell us about this offsite model, and then what the benefits were you found in your paper on that in terms of these things that companies are worried about.
Yeah, so I think what this book tries to do is expand our minds to the idea that in person can only be done in a downtown office and has to be done every week. The reality of most people that I know of is that they are part of teams that are largely global. So
Exactly.
just going to a downtown office, first of all, you're not going to see your entire team every week. It's more likely that the manager is going to see you and derive some satisfaction out of that. So what this book tries to argue is that there are two dimensions here. One is the frequency of in-person, and the other dimension is the venue of in-person. So the frequency and the venue. And today there's an opportunity to reimagine both frequency and venue. So in the book, I argue some teams need to meet every week because maybe they're starting a new product development project. Other teams are just fine meeting on a monthly frequency. And some other teams could be like, okay, we are constantly on Zoom and Slack, and we can meet once a quarter and have a lot of fun together. Really go for dinners and lunches and play games and get to know each other and do mentoring sessions and brainstorming sessions. So let every team decide the frequency. And on the venue as well, there are many places where people can meet except for the office. And so I'll give you one example. I'm working with a sales team, and they have decided to meet at the end of large sales conferences because the whole team goes to the sales conference. So for them, actually, it makes sense to hang out for 2 or 3 extra days after the sales conference and then do a deep dive and a team connect. So the book argues that, teams is the right level of analysis here. It's not the company, not the individual. And teams should have the frequency in deciding when to meet, at what frequency to meet, and where to meet.
I 100% agree. The barrier often to this, though, is in what I've seen and in the research is the managerial mindset. And in some cases, I think we're at the moment harking back to, Theory X from decades ago, where the manager, we can't trust employees. They're lazy. They're hopeless. If you don't watch them every second, they're going to slack off, which is insane to me because, that went out of vogue decades ago. So is it this desire for control? Is it because managers don't know another way to manage? Is it just because they're too stubborn to change because we know change is difficult? What is this barrier you're seeing at the management level to allow autonomy, which we've also known for decades is so important for job satisfaction and organizational commitment? Why are we hitting these roadblocks again when we've already shown conclusively that these models can work and work well?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is that it's not every manager who has that mindset. So,
Of course. Yeah.
if you think about the financial services industry, for every JP Morgan Chase and every Goldman Sachs, there's also a Citibank and Jane Fraser, who's been very strong supporter of hybrid work. In the tech world, Nvidia, which is like one of the most valuable companies in the world, has been very supportive of remote work.
Yes.
So, for every Amazon, there is a Microsoft or an Nvidia or an Atlassian or a Dropbox, Upwork. I can keep going. But you're right. I think that there are three things happening. So one, there is an element of mistrust. There's also this problem that we have for far too long. Managers have measured productivity of their employees based on input-based measures. So how many days you come to work, how many meetings you attend, how many lines of code you write, how many emails you type to me as a manager. And what we need to do is take this opportunity to say productivity and performance should not be measured based on how long I work or how many meetings I work, but the quality of my work. What I'm trying to do with a couple of companies now is go through role by role by role, looking at the key performance indicators and saying, can we shift from input-based KPIs to output-based KPIs? And the other thing is training some of these older generation managers on how to be comfortable in communicating in a virtual world. So how to navigate Slack, how to be yourself on Zoom. And so one large tech company I worked with invited actors to train everyone who was 60 and above to be more camera friendly. So I think there is the mindset, there is the ego, but setting that aside, there is also the performance measurement system that needs to be changed from input based to output based. And then some of the older, when I say older, like more senior managers need to be trained on how to be comfortable and themselves online.
What I love about your book is there is so much evidence in every line, on every page, walking people through the fact that a lot of their concerns or their perceptions about this actually don't need to be the case, that aren't actually true. And so if we talk about one that in particular, and you had an earlier paper on this around virtual water coolers, because that the mentoring, the learning one is often cited by managers as the reason why people need to be in the office 5 days a week. So tell us about what you found in that paper, which I loved.
Yeah, thank you, Libby. So I think the motivation for that paper is that there's long-standing research in organizations which shows that when employees go to the physical office, they tend to have in-person encounters or quote unquote water cooler encounters within a fixed radius of their physical cubicle. And it's often the work that Tom Allen at MIT did showed that it was about 25 meters of where you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting.
Mm.
And if two people are in different floors of the same building, you're much less likely to have a water cooler conversation. And if you're in two different buildings on the same campus, forget about it. You're never
That's
going to
right.
meet
Yeah.
someone for a water cooler conversation. But on Zoom or on Google Meet, Hangouts or these tools, you can break those silos. And in particular, you know, water cooler conversations happen because they are physically constrained. They tend to happen within the same function. They tend to happen within the same tenures. So junior people have water cooler conversations with junior people. I've never heard an intern say, I went to the C-suite, I knocked the door of the CEO and said, "Can we have a water cooler conversation?" Right? Uh, but on Zoom, you can do a very senior person meeting, just like a junior person, like we are. And so
Mm-hmm.
we ran this experiment in a very large investment bank, and we saw that even a brief virtual water cooler had a positive effect. And we had an experiment. So we randomized which interns got to speak to senior managers on Zoom for an informal session, and some of them did not. And so the virtual water cooler had a positive effect on both performance and the probability of getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I should point out is uh, both this study and another study of the offsites that you mentioned, we found a stronger effect if the two individuals in the virtual or the physical interaction were demographically similar. So we found that the sharing gender and sharing ethnicity led to a stronger effect. And as you know, sociologists have called this homophily.
Mm-hmm.
And so we find the effect of homophily both on virtual water coolers and in-person interactions. And so I think we need to be cognizant when we go to an office party or when we attend Zoom calls that we should not be only speaking to people who look just like us.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And as we've known, with recruitment for such a long time, our unconscious bias is we'll tend to hire people who are like us, that we think we're going to get along with, that have similar characteristics. So let's talk about then one of the other big concerns that you cover in the book, which is around things like networking development, isolation, and those people who aren't in the office 5 days a week in front of the manager, they're just not going to get promoted.
Yeah, so my solution to that problem has been, of course, there are many micro solutions. I'll mention a few. So one of the things that the all remote companies have taught me, so the GitLabs and the Zapiers and there are hundreds of them now.
Mm.
They have essentially moved their office to the offsite. So instead of meeting every week in an office, they meet on a monthly or a bi-monthly or a quarterly frequency at the offsite, and they make that in-person time really intentional. So no one goes to the offsite, and the idea is that no one should be sitting around writing code with headphones on, which is happening in many of the RTOs. I saw a picture that day where a very large company I won't name has called people back. They had 9 floors earlier. They've leased out 4 floors. So now they have 5 floors left. And people are sitting in the corridor with headphones trying to get on Zoom calls. It's terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. But I think the offsite has been a great solution to socialize in the all remote space. And there are other solutions. I'll give you another very practical one, which many of these all remote companies practice. So they have this buddy system. So for every new employee, they automatically get assigned to a buddy who is someone in a different team than me, so that I have the comfort zone of sharing anything, uh, even controversial topics with my buddy. And then the program incentivizes the buddy to come visit me in person and I go visit the buddy. So in this is on top of the team and the company retreat. So the idea here is that we need in person, but there's many ways to design intentional in-person interactions, which are much better than people coming into an office and locking themselves up in rooms or cubicles and putting on headphones and never speaking to each other.
Absolutely. And then I would add to that, of course, in my own research, the effects that we've shown a causal relationship between standard open plan office noise and a 34% increase in physiological stress and a 25% increase in negative mood. And so it's almost like that whole issue of the modern workplace, which is still very poor, certainly in terms of visual and acoustic privacy, has just been forgotten. When we have managers, though, and we've seen this in recent weeks in Australia with our opposition leader coming out and saying, look what Elon Musk is doing in the US. If I get elected in this election, we're going to require all government workers to come back to the office 5 days a week. My personal view, which has been supported as well in research and in industry feedback, is that a lot of this drive is over concern about commercial real estate values rather than just any other reason. But also, like we've seen with Musk, this view that everyone must come to the office. So how can we counter that as organizations and as managers who may have someone or a leader or a politician saying, well, this is what we have to do?
Yeah, no, I think my short-term answer is that, some of these RTO mandates cannot be in the short term, sort of like, uh, you know, they are what they are. But in the long term, the labor market corrects for itself. So just the
Yes.
example you gave, which is when Amazon does a mandate, it opens the door for the Atlassian CEO to say, come and join us. And not everyone will leave Amazon, but some of their best employees will leave and some of their women will leave. And so over time, the RTO company will become less diverse and the more flexible companies will become more diverse. And I don't think in today's environment, any board can justify to its investors why they're becoming less diverse and not seeking the best talent. It's just not possible. Maybe in the short term, given where the world is right now, who knows? But in the long term, it's just not going to be sustainable. So I think the talent, the element about attracting and retaining talent the labor market will correct for itself.
Absolutely. I think that good talent always leads the market, as you said, and it will correct. I want to talk about how we implement this in a moment. But first, I'd love to talk about what you also discuss around the role of digital twins and AI and automation and sensors, because that other comment we have is that, well, what about for the people who can't, in inverted commas, do this? And of course, we have time flexibility. That's an option for people that may not have geographic flexibility. But you've opened up, a much broader conversation around this. So I'd love to hear some more about that.
Yeah, no, this is the topic that I'm most excited about. Because for years the criticism of work from anywhere has been it's only for folks who are white collar and
With a
work from
laptop.
desk with a laptop.
Yeah.
Now, what digital twins do is digital twins is a combination of sensors and data being collected in real time on a cloud with AI applications. And what it does, and this operation could be a factory, it could be an airport, it could be a warehouse, it could be an oil rig, it could be a hospital. And once you have a digital replica of the hospital or the oil rig or the factory in real time, then not everyone has to be in that physical space all the time. So I'll give you one example from my recent work, which I talk about in the book. So first I studied the Unilever digital twin in Brazil, where they implemented a digital twin in a Brazilian detergent factory. And on the day of the pilot, that factory was run from the kitchen table of the main operator. But more recently, I've studied this in a Turkish company. And their problem was they had power plants all over the country, but none of the good engineers wanted to go live in the mountains and small villages of Turkey. Everyone wanted to live in either Istanbul or Ankara, the large cities.
Mm-hmm.
And so they created a digital twin headquarters in Istanbul. And now from that room, it's a very large room, they run all the 10 power plants. So
Wow.
the only people left in the power plants are the maintenance people. All the engineers and all the technicians have moved to Istanbul. And now I know in the UK, the NHS is doing something which they're calling virtual wards, where neither the doctor or the patient are in a hospital. They are on a session like this, and the doctor gets to, because of sensors the patient is wearing, gets to see accurate real-time data on the patient. So I think I think this opens up a new world of work from anywhere, where now all kinds of professions could conceivably done at least partly from far away.
Which is, I agree with you. I'm hugely excited about this because when you talk about some of those places and those industries, we have this in Australia as well, fly in, fly out workforces to very remote places that are very inhospitable, that people just would never want to live long term, or it wasn't feasible to even live there on a permanent basis. And there's the safety considerations. In some of those fly in, fly out communities, we have exacerbated problems with mental health, with things like alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and other issues. So it's not just, oh, that's nice, they don't have to, go and live somewhere they don't want to live. There's real imperatives for why this is so important on so many fronts, economically and socially as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I think the oil exploration industry, the mining industry, no one wants to go and live in an offshore oil rig for 6 months a year.
No.
But I think the elegant thing, if I may, Libby, to add on work from anywhere is equally, if there is a young couple which wants to move to a town where cost of living is very, very cheap,
Mm.
work from anywhere also allows for that. And
Yes.
that's exactly what I find happening in my studies in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a small town in the heartland of the United States. Like many of these towns, they have lost all the young people to the coastal cities. And
Mm.
now, because of work from anywhere and this remote work incentive program, they have attracted 3,500 new families over a short period of time to their city. So I
Mm.
think work from anywhere works from everyone. If someone wants to go and live in Istanbul because they like city life, so be it. If a young couple wants to go and move in a smaller town because it's cheaper to buy a home there, that's also something they are allowed to do.
Which, as you say, Raj, is another extremely important factor because many people are wanting to, at the same time, yes, people always want to live in those urban environments, but we're seeing the slow living movement, the tiny home movement, wanting to have a different pace of life. And in Australia and in many other cities in the US as well now, housing is not attainable for younger people coming through that's no longer like the American dream. The Australian dream of owning a property in a city like Sydney or Melbourne is just no longer attainable for people. And so rather than having to give up on that idea that, well, actually I'd like to buy my own home, this work from anywhere is so important, and for stopping the brain drain and having renewal of so many cities that have been suffering those effects for years, as you said. Let's talk
Absolutely.
let's talk about implementation now, because I know many managers who are listeners of the podcast, Raj, will be so keen to go, great, I now have some data from your book. Things I can go back with hard evidence to talk about, but then I'm still not sure, how do I actually implement this? And are there some good case studies that would allow me to talk to my board or talk to my executive team to say, yes, this can be done?
Yeah. So, in summary, of course, the detail is in the book. But
Yes,
in
yes.
summary, what I do in the book is to say there are three models that managers should consider. Uh, it's the first model, the easiest one to implement is the weekly hybrid model, followed by the monthly hybrid model, followed by the quarterly hybrid model. And in transitioning, and I essentially argue that teams should decide which model works best for them. So in the weekly hybrid model, the team is agreeing which days of the week they're going to be in person together, but they will
Mhm.
meet every week. In the monthly hybrid model, they're deciding which days of the month they're going to be together, but also it's going to be once or few days every month, and the quarterly hybrid model is a whole week every quarter where the entire team is going to show up. But to support each of these models, there are a host of management practices related to sharing knowledge and communication and mentoring and a variety of management functions which become important. So what I do in the book is say, if you're choosing this kind of a model, these are the management practices you need to focus on, and these are the best practices that I've discovered in my work. And then you can slowly transition from the weekly model to the monthly model to the quarterly model as the team builds management muscle. As you gain confidence in asynchronous communication, as you gain confidence in designing offsites well. I lay out a step-by-step transition from the weekly model to the quarterly model.
Yeah, and it's absolutely fantastic. Everybody should buy Raj's book. It's brilliant. And I love the fact that it is, because change is so hard in organizations, and to go from 5 days a week in the office or maybe 3 days a week where everyone's required on the same days to some of these ideas is both challenging, but also, as you said, they haven't built that management muscle. They haven't extended that kind of letting go of the control and embracing that autonomy. So yeah, it's very clear how to do that. What about, Raj, for managers who this trust issue? Because I think that's the real one. And you talk about this a lot as well. But if I'm a manager listening and I think, well, there was that one employee who was just slacking. And I always say to managers, if your employee is at home on the couch watching Netflix, when they're in the office, they're not working either. You just think that they are. They're doing performative productivity, which you also mentioned. So what can we do to help managers increase that trust when probably everyone's had the experience of having a team member who's perhaps not the right person or not performing well?
Yeah, so it boils down to one thing, I think, and as we discussed a little earlier, it boils down to having a performance measurement system that's output based. And for
Yes.
decades, organizational scholars have had great ideas. So one
Yes.
of the ideas that we've had is 360-degree performance evaluation, where everyone gets a performance evaluation from not only their manager, which is the top of the circle, but they also get performance evaluations from their direct reports and their customers and even the people who depend on them, their suppliers. And so if you get an output based measure, which is 360 degrees, I would say, as if I was managing a team, I would be much relieved, because at the end of the day, what the manager really cares about is the team performing well. So
Mm.
if you really are able to fix the performance measurement system, then honestly, I don't care if you're working 3 days or 4 days, or you're working from the beach or working. Of course, there are some professions where you need data security. And in the book, I talk about all of that. The
Yes.
boundary conditions, if you're dealing with pharmaceutical data, then you need to be in a certain environment. Uh, but I think the whole trust issue boils down to evaluating performance in a transparent and an objective way.
Absolutely. Is there anything else, Raj, that I haven't asked you about yet that you wanted to talk about?
So no, I think the only other thing that, of course, I talk about in the book, which I'm very excited about, is since the pandemic, now there's this phenomena, and I was reading recently about New Zealand, where countries are offering special visas for remote workers. So these are the digital nomad visas. And my count, and I give a list of countries and their policies in the book. Uh, my count is that 50 or 60 countries are now
Mm.
offering these visas,
Hmm.
including New Zealand most recently. So I think if you're a young person and you are able to travel, this is an amazing opportunity, because, then you get to expand your social network, you get opportunities, you get experiences that the previous generations didn't have.
Mm.
And the amazing thing for why the digital nomad visas have gone from zero, there were actually two countries offering visas of this kind before the pandemic, Estonia and Barbados. But why this has gone from 2 to 60 in 3 years is, these remote workers come with their own jobs. So they're not competing with locals for jobs. And that's why even the most hardened politician loves this, because they're
Yes.
bringing tax dollars and their ideas and their energy without competing for jobs. So I predict these digital nomad visas will become stronger. It's we had decades of companies competing for talent, and now countries are competing for talent. And if you are a young person listening, I feel it's an amazing opportunity to travel a bit before you decide which country or which city you love the most and settle down there.
Absolutely. Raj, we're going to put links about your research where people can find out more about you, and also the book in the show notes. When is the book released? And yeah.
It's being released on April 22nd, which I believe is Earth Day. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. It's an absolutely fantastic book, so comprehensive, so practical. As I said, I think it'll be a staple in every management library. And look, thank you so much for your time. Raj, it was an absolute pleasure to talk to you today on the Floorplan.
Thanks for having me, Libby. Thank you.
Our special guest on the Floorplan this week, Raj Choudhury out of the Harvard Business School. Fascinating, Libby.
Yeah, could talk to him for ages. I say that about all my guests, but I'm
You're
very
getting
fortunate.
well, they've all been good, but just a recent run of really interesting thinkers in the space.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And one of the things I loved that he talked about is that just this evolution of AI. And we've talked about people just using it to write them emails or cheat on their assignments, but it's many, many eons ahead of that now. And a lot of people are really still not up with that. And he talked about this idea of a digital twin. And so a great example is, because I know being such a Luddite, Matt, you won't know what I'm talking about.
I'm not that bad. Come on.
Right. So just imagine, Matt, you have a superb customer service agent with years of experience helping you with your most demanding clients. You could load the last 5 years of their emails, coupled with all their internal documentation, a log history of the last 2 years of service calls, and you can essentially create him or her digitally with all the knowledge, style, and internal contacts this person has developed. The twin, which may look initially like an AI assistant, could then carry on your work while you're on vacation. So we're going to have Agent Matt.
Matt Mark II.
And I follow somebody who already has an agent, and video is super realistic. You can go and ask him questions, and it has gathered all of the questions of how he's answered things in the past, and then gives you an answer of what he would be likely to say.
So next time you pop up a video of one of your interviews with people, our listeners are going to be looking, going, "Is that really Libby?" Or is that digital Libby?
Yes. Well, no.
D-Lib.
I don't have an agent, but Raj also talks about how this digital twins can be used in remote work, oil rigs and mining, places that are very undesirable perhaps to live long term, expensive to go to, dangerous. So lots and lots of benefits. So highly recommend the book, and obviously it was great chatting to him.
The creator in me is now thinking of film scripts where this kind of narrative might fit. It's going to be a thing before you know it.
Absolutely.
Hollywood will take over. Great episode, Libby. We'll talk next in a fortnight.
And we'll see how your toe is.
You've been listening to The Floorplan, a Bond University podcast hosted by Dr. Libby Sander and Matt Webber. For more Bond audio and podcast content, search for Bond University on Spotify.